Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take with college football approaching. It's time to go over my college football predictions. I've gone over my ACC predictions, and now I'm going over my Big 12 predictions. This conference was one of the most exciting conferences to watch last year because of the depth of the conference from top to bottom, and I feel like that's what you're going to get again with this conference. Now, as far as who I have winning the conference, it was very hard for me to predict who's going to win. Like I could see it going many different ways here. For me, I'm just going to go with one of the more like the stable program, the Big 12, and I'm going to go with Kansas State. And I like that they have a lot of key pieces coming back, especially quarterback Avery Johnson. They have running back Dylan Edwards back. A lot of key players in the offensive line, defensive lines are back. They have some good people in the line. Now the secondary is going to be a little bit of a watch there on the defensive side of the ball, and then offensive side of the ball. We'll see which weapons on the perimeter can step up, but I like Chris Kleiman, and again I like how stable the program is, and I feel like Avery Johnson, had to go through his redshirt or sophomore slumps, redshirt sophomore slumps and all that, but I feel like now with another full off season and all that as being the guy, I feel like he's going to show some improvement. Now, what's interesting is their schedule. And one of the reasons why I have them even making the Big 12 title game is because their schedule is actually very favorable. So they have to go to Utah and to Baylor and to Kansas. Those aren't easy, but like as far as like big names at home, they get Iowa State obviously at a neutral field, which is nice because you don't have to go to Iowa State, and then they get TCU at home, so that's a big home field advantage there. They get Texas Tech at home, which is beautiful. They get Colorado at home to end the year, which is huge. And they avoid certain teams like Arizona State and BYU. So I feel like Kansas State has potential there, assuming one thing I was gonna forget. One thing that they need to improve on from last year was their field goal kick was atrocious. So assuming they improve on that, along with what I said earlier about Kansas State, then I feel like they should win the Big 12. Now, the other team they have facing Kansas State in the Big 12 title game is Baylor. That's right, I'm going with the Red Hot Bears team. They finished the season, really hot, won their last 6 games before the bowl game. They returned their star quarterback, Robert Sorensen. They returned their star running back, their top weapons, most people on the offensive line. And one thing to keep in mind is that their conference schedule specifically is actually pretty doable because they get Arizona State at home, they get Kansas State at home, they get Utah at home, they get Houston at home. So that's like at TCU is a rivalry game, but at least that's in Texas. So there's just not a lot of big time traveling for them. So that's going to be huge. Now the biggest question for Baylor is that their defense was very hot and cold last year, very hot and cold. More times I say cold. So if their defense can improve, then Baylor could even win the whole conference and get into the playoffs. But that's going to be the key factor there is the defense. But I definitely like how Baylor ended last season and the players that they have returning. Now, as far as other teams who can contend for the Big 12 title, I mean, there's some teams that I won't have contending for the Big 12 title, but it wouldn't surprise me if they win. But basically, I'm going to talk about 6 teams because I basically have them at a 6-way tie, basically, for third. Now let's start off with, let's go ahead and start with the champions last year, Arizona State. I love that they returned almost 80% of their team. They are, so they're going to be very good once again. I expect the quarterback Sam Levin to improve. I don't feel like Arizona State's going to have a hangover from winning the Big 12 championship last year. Now, just losing their heart and soul of the team, running back Cam Scadaboo, that's going to be the big thing. Now, I like the Army running back that they got in the portal, but losing Scadaboo, I feel like it's got to at least cost you a game that wouldn't last year. Like, it's just that big of a deal. And then also the reason why I don't have them repeating as champions because their schedule is not the easiest schedule out there. So they have to go to Baylor, they have to go to Utah, they have to go to Iowa State, they have to go to Colorado, and then they get some interesting teams at home like at TCU and Houston and all that. So because of their schedule difficulty, that's the main reason why I don't have them repeating as Big 12 champions. Not only that, but also unless you're like your Texas or Oklahoma, the Big 12 usually doesn't have repeat champions. um, so another team that I have being in the mix is Iowa State. They returned their quarterback Rocco Beck. They returned their running back room. They returned some key players in the front seven. Now, the big question marks for Iowa State is that they do replace a couple stars on the offensive line, so we'll see how long that takes for the gel. And also, they lost 2 wide receivers to the NFL draft. So obviously, they brought in transfers to replace them, but that's a big question mark there. So I feel like they're, like I said, they're definitely going to be in contention and all that. And their schedule is actually not that hard compared to other Big 12 teams, so there definitely is the avenue. To me, if they can defeat Kansas State and Ireland, then I think they're locked to make the Big 12 change game. But since I don't have them beating Kansas State in the Ireland game, that's why I have them barely out on the outside looking in. And then another team is BYU, even though Jake Retzloff left. And now true freshman Bear Bachmeier is a starter. I still like this team. They return a lot of key players from last year's team. They return their best running back, their best receiver, some stars on the offensive line. They lost their whole defense line last year, but they got really good players from the portal to fill that spot. They have one, if not the best linebacking core in the Big 12, and then I like some of their players in the secondary. And they have one, if not the best field goal kicker in the country as well, which is very key. And like I said, I just, obviously I'm a BYU homer, and their schedule is one of the easiest schedules in the Big 12 as well. In the end, I feel like because they have a freshman quarterback, and you're going to expect even no matter how talented he is, you're going to expect some freshman mistakes. That's why I feel like that would potentially cost BYU from making the Big 12 title game. But again, I do feel like they're going to be in contention. There's not going to be a big drop off like some people think. I feel like they're going to be right there in the mix. And then let's go to their rivals, which is Utah. I love what they did offensively because that was their main issue last year. They hired Jason Beck, the offensive coordinator from New Mexico. He had a top 5 offense in the country last year. He brought in New Mexico quarterback Devin Dampier, who's a really electric athlete at the quarterback position. The fact that he hasn't played on the Power 4 level and the fact that he runs a lot, we'll see if he can remain healthy and see how that goes. But assuming he can transition nicely, then that will be really good because Utah has one of the best offensive lines in the Big 12, and the Utah is usually going to have a good defense. My only concern offensively with Utah is that they don't have like really elite like receivers in the mix. Like they don't, like I don't, to my opinion, they don't even have a number 1 receiver as of right now. So I feel like that will potentially cost them, but again, they have a manageable schedule in the Big 12, so a few things break their way, and wouldn't surprise me if they can make it to the Big 12 title game. And then of course there's the team that everyone's been talking about, Texas Tech, with all the money they spent in the offseason and all that. I definitely like what they have coming back, and I feel like Joe McGuire's a good coach, but the one reason why I don't have them going all the way is because I feel like their schedule, some people say their schedule is easy, but I kind of disagree because they have to go to Utah, to Houston, to Arizona State, to Kansas State, to West Virginia, and they have to like host a couple of decent teams like BYU and Kansas. So I just feel like that's not an easy road there. And typically with Texas Tech, even when they have their great teams, they just always find a way to slip up. So I feel like that there will be a game where they slip up and that will cost them for making the Big 12 title game. But we'll see if all the money they spent ends up paying off or not. And then last but not least, the other team that's a dark horse is TCU. So they returned one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, and Josh Hoover, and they returned some key players on the offensive side of the ball, like their offensive line, for example. They made some necessary upgrades to the running back room because that was an issue for them last year. They have some key weapons coming back, and then defensively, I feel like they made some good additions in the pro this offseason. Now, the reason why I don't have them going all the way is because, again, their schedule is not easy, going to Arizona State, to Kansas State, to BYU, to Houston, to West Virginia. But, again, they're definitely going to be a spoiler, if you will, definitely a dark horse. Okay, so now there's 2 teams that I don't have going all the way, but they could at least be interesting. One is, of course, Kansas. Because of Jalen Daniels and Lance Leipold and the way he's done there. I know Kansas had a down year, an unexpected year last year, but I feel like they're going to bounce back, and I feel like they're at least going to make a bowl game. And then the other team to watch out for is the Houston Cougars. Willie Fritz, usually in year two he gets programs up and rolling, and I feel like that's the case again with he brought in Texas A&M quarterback, former 5-star recruit Connor Wegman. I mean, he also has Chris, who's the starter towards the end of last year, so he has the pocket quarterback to guide him through, but then he has the dual threat guy if he needs it. They brought in some good pieces on offense. The Houston's offensive line was the main issue last year, and they've done some things to try to hope to improve the offensive line, and then defensively they're definitely really good. So I feel like, and their schedule is manageable. So I feel like Houston's gonna make a bowl game this year. So now for other teams and there's one more team that I feel like will make a bowl game, and I think Cincinnati will finally get over that hump there, because if Cincinnati does make a bowl game, the head coach Satterfield is probably on the outside looking in as far as keeping his job goes. But I like Brendan Scoresby. I like I like the receivers that they brought in to try to beef up the receiver room. I liked other things that they did to try to get bowl eligible. Again, I don't feel like they're going to be a great team, but I feel like they can do just enough to make a bowl game. And then a couple other teams that won't make a bowl game but could be interesting is West Virginia, Colorado, Arizona, and Oklahoma State. And then, of course, I have UCF as the last team. I just feel like it's just too much rebuild there. But again, those are my Big 12 predictions, with Kansas State winning it all. With winning all in the Big 12 and defeating Baylor in the Big 12 championship game. But again, a bunch of other teams in the mix there, and I'm looking forward to watching the Big 12. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast. You all have a good rest of your day.